The spaceship descended slowly through the swirling violet clouds of Virelia, a planet that had once been a jewel of interstellar commerce and culture, now scarred by recent natural disasters. Captain Elias Grant, a human diplomat and observer, leaned over the viewing window, watching the landscape unfold below. Towering crystalline structures, remnants of Virelia's advanced architecture, shimmered despite the damage. The planet was beautiful, yet it carried the marks of tragedy. Elias had been sent to assist the Virelian people in rebuilding their society and to establish stronger ties with humanity. He knew the task would be difficult. Humans had a reputation in the galaxy not just for their technology, but for their empathy, adaptability, and unique ability to understand and connect with other species. This was the strength he carried with him. As the shuttle touched down in a broad clearing, Elias stepped out into the alien world. The air was crisp, tinged with a floral scent he had never encountered before. The ground beneath his feet pulsed faintly, as if alive, sending tiny vibrations that reminded him of the planet's vitality even after so much destruction. He could see Virelians moving in the distance, their humanoid forms elegant and slender, with iridescent skin that reflected the soft light of their twin suns. Among them, one figure stood out immediately. She was different from the others. Her movements were hesitant, almost fragile, and her eyes carried a depth of sorrow that drew Elias's attention. She approached him slowly, her head bowed slightly. Elias noticed the traditional markings on her skin, symbols of mourning. He realized she was a widow. "Captain Grant," she said in a melodic voice that Elias had been trained to understand through the translator device. "I am Liara. I have waited for someone like you." "Right." Elias inclined his head politely. "I am here to help your people, Liara. How can I assist you?" Liara hesitated, as if choosing her words carefully. "I am alone," she admitted. "My partner has gone. The customs of my people honor memory, but I do not know how to honor life in the way humans do. I have heard of your ways, and I wish to understand them. Let me be your wife tonight." Elias blinked. The phrase startled him at first, but he quickly realized it was not a request for intimacy in the human sense. In Virelian culture, it seemed to signify a desire for companionship and learning a symbolic union to understand human customs of care, empathy, and connection. He nodded. "If it helps you, I will spend time with you tonight. We will share human ways of supporting one another." Liara's face brightened faintly, a glimmer of hope in the midst of her sorrow. She led Elias to a simple dwelling, built with translucent materials that glowed softly from the light within. The interior was modest but elegant, filled with artifacts that seemed to capture the history of her people. Holographic images flickered gently along the walls, showing scenes of celebrations, daily life, and memories of those she had lost. Elias took a moment to observe. "Your culture is remarkable," he said. "You honor memory in a way humans often struggle to do." Liara smiled faintly. "We try, but we grieve in solitude. I have heard that humans grieve together, and through sharing, find healing." They began simply. Elias told stories of human traditions, how families and friends would gather to celebrate life, how songs and shared meals could bring comfort, how even small acts of kindness could lift the weight of sadness. Liara listened intently, her large eyes reflecting curiosity and a quiet longing. "Do humans always care for one another in this way?" she asked. Elias smiled. "Not always, but we try. Our strength lies not in our technology or power, but in our willingness to understand and help others." Liara nodded slowly. She gestured to the holograms along the walls. "My partner and I, we shared everything. Now I have these memories, but they do not ease the emptiness. I want to learn to share again, even if differently." "Will you teach me?" Elias agreed. "We will take it step by step. Tonight, we will learn from each other. Tomorrow, you will begin teaching others what you learn, just as I will learn from you." For hours, they shared stories, exchanged thoughts, and explored customs together. Elias showed Liara simple gestures humans use to convey care: handshakes, gentle touches on the shoulder, and expressions of reassurance. Liara responded with her own rituals. She taught Elias how her people honor memories through light and movement, how they create spaces of remembrance that are both personal and communal. As the night deepened, Elias and Liara prepared a small meal together. Though Varelian ingredients were unfamiliar, he adapted human cooking methods to create a simple dish. Liara watched closely, fascinated by the process, and together they laughed as small mishaps occurred. Elias realized that humor, too, was a universal bridge. Later, they sat quietly, observing the twin moons rise over the horizon. Liara's eyes glistened with a mix of sorrow and hope. "I feel lighter," she said, "not because the pain has gone, but because it is shared. I am learning that life can continue, even after loss." Elias nodded. "That is what humans do. We carry our memories and grief, but we also carry the capacity to connect, to heal, and to help others heal." By the end of the night, Liara felt a sense of peace she had not known since her loss. Elias, too, felt a quiet satisfaction. He had not performed any grand acts of heroism, nor had he wielded any advanced technology. Yet, in this simple sharing of humanity's most basic gifts, empathy, patience, and care, he had bridged a gap that many thought unbridgeable. As dawn approached, the first rays of the twin suns cast a gentle glow across the crystalline structures of the city. Liara looked at Elias with gratitude. "Tonight, I have learned more than I thought possible. Not only about humans, but about myself." Elias smiled. "And I have learned more about your people. About the strength that lies in honoring life, even when it is gone. We are not so different, you and I. We both seek connection and understanding." Liara extended her hand, a gesture of trust and companionship. Elias took it. They stood together in silence. Two beings from different worlds, united in the simplest of ways through shared understanding, compassion, and the willingness to teach and learn from one another. In that quiet moment, the seeds of a new alliance were planted. It was not one forged in treaties or technology, but in something deeper: the human ability to care, to connect, and to inspire trust across the stars. Elias realized that if humanity could extend this same empathy to countless other worlds, the galaxy would be a place where collaboration and peace were possible, not because humans commanded it, but because they lived it. And as the twin suns rose fully over Virelia, bathing the city in light, Elias and Liara knew that this was only the beginning. Their journey together would teach both humans and Virelians that the greatest power lay not in strength, weapons, or conquest, but in understanding, compassion, and the simple courage to reach out to another being, even in the darkest moments. The morning light spilled over Virelia, painting the crystalline structures with soft hues of gold and violet. Elias stood outside Liara's dwelling, taking in the serenity that had settled over the city after the long night. The twin suns climbed higher, warming the air, and the gentle hum of life on the planet filled his ears. Liara joined him shortly, her expression calm but curious, as though she was carrying a quiet determination that had grown from the lessons of the previous evening. "Today," she said, her voice steady, "I want to learn more about human ways, not just for myself, but for my people. They need hope, guidance, and the ability to understand life beyond loss." Elias nodded. "Then we will start with small things. Humans share tasks together to build trust and understanding. Sometimes, the simplest actions teach the most." They walked toward the central courtyard, where other Virelians had begun their morning routines. Some tended gardens that grew luminous plants, while others repaired structures damaged in the storms that had plagued the planet. Elias observed carefully, noting the precision and grace with which the Virelians moved. It was clear that their culture valued order and beauty, even amidst rebuilding. Liara led Elias to a small group of Virelian elders. Their eyes widened slightly as they recognized the human diplomat, and whispers spread through the crowd. Elias smiled gently, raising his hands in greeting. He remembered the training that had brought him here. Diplomacy was not just about words, but about gestures, patience, and respect. Liara introduced him. These are the elders who guide our communities. Captain Grant has come to share human wisdom. I have asked him to teach us not only how to rebuild our city, but also how to rebuild trust and connection among ourselves. The elders nodded, though some appeared skeptical. Elias understood. Humans were still new to this part of the galaxy, and many civilizations were cautious of their intentions. He stepped forward, keeping his tone gentle and inclusive. I do not claim to have all the answers, he said, but humans have learned that listening, sharing, and working together can create solutions stronger than any single effort. The first exercise was simple. Elias asked the elders and a small group of Virelians to choose a task and complete it together. They picked a patch of garden that had been damaged in the storms. Elias and Liara joined them, planting new seedlings alongside the locals. As they worked, Elias encouraged conversation, sharing memories of growth, stories of patience, and experiences of overcoming difficulties. Liara watched closely. She noted how Elias spoke with care, how he asked questions that encouraged the Virelians to reflect, and how he made everyone feel that their contribution mattered. The elders began to soften, seeing that the human approach was not about control or criticism but about collaboration and mutual respect. Hours passed in the garden, and the atmosphere began to change. Laughter emerged as small mistakes were corrected with gentle humor. One elder, who had been particularly skeptical, smiled as a seedling was accidentally dropped into the wrong patch. Elias laughed too, his warmth contagious. The group began to understand that imperfection was part of learning and growing. Liara felt a sense of pride swelling within her. For the first time since her partner's passing, she could see her people connecting in ways that brought light into their lives. She realized that human methods, though simple, were powerful tools for healing and community building. As the sun climbed higher, Elias suggested a break. They sat under a canopy of bioluminescent trees, enjoying a simple meal he had prepared using local ingredients. Liara and the others were fascinated by the way he combined flavors, and soon conversation shifted from work to stories of family, friendship, and courage. Elias shared tales from Earth, how humans faced challenges not unlike the Virelians, how communities came together to overcome disasters, and how the smallest acts of kindness often made the greatest difference. Liara listened intently, her eyes reflecting admiration and a growing sense of hope. You see, Elias said softly, humans do not rely on strength or technology alone. We rely on our ability to care, to understand, and to help one another. It is this that allows us to face the unknown and the difficult moments in life. Liara nodded. She felt a deep resonance with his words. I wish my people could see this, she said. It is not just the rebuilding of our city we need. It is the rebuilding of our hearts and minds, the way we connect with one another. Elias smiled. Then let us start with small steps. One person at a time. One act at a time. Trust and understanding grow slowly, but they grow strong. The afternoon brought new challenges. A small disagreement arose among the Virelians over how to distribute supplies. Some felt that certain groups had received more than others. Normally, such conflicts might escalate or remain unresolved, but Elias saw an opportunity. He gathered the group together and suggested a human method of problem-solving: open discussion, listening without interrupting, and finding a solution that considered everyone's needs. He guided them gently, encouraging each Virelian to speak and to consider the perspective of others. At first, the discussions were hesitant, filled with polite hesitations. Elias did not rush them. He reminded them that humans often resolve conflicts not by force but by patience, empathy, and mutual respect. Gradually, the Virelians began to speak more freely, expressing concerns, hopes, and suggestions. Liara observed in awe. She had never seen her people approach disagreements this way. The tension that had lingered in the group began to dissipate as each member felt heard and valued. By the end of the discussion, they had devised a plan that was fair and inclusive, a plan that balanced needs and resources effectively. The success of this approach brought smiles and quiet nods of approval. Elias knew that the lesson went deeper than simply resolving a dispute. He had shown them that understanding, patience, and collaboration could replace suspicion and frustration. As evening approached, Liara invited Elias to walk with her through the city. The twin suns were lowering, casting long shadows and bathing the structures in a gentle, warm light. The streets, once chaotic and somber, now carried a sense of purpose and calm. Virelians moved with intention, some practicing the new methods of cooperation Elias had introduced, others quietly observing, inspired by what they had witnessed. Liara spoke softly, almost to herself. But Elias could hear every word. I have seen my people smile again. I have seen them listen, care, and work together. I have learned more about life tonight than I could have imagined. Elias placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. It is not only your people who are learning. Humans, too, grow when we reach out to understand and help. That is the beauty of connection. We learn from each other, we heal together, and we find strength we did not know we had. They paused, near a small fountain that reflected the light of the twin moons beginning to rise. Liara knelt by the water, gently touching the surface. I feel lighter, she said. Not because the sorrow has disappeared, but because it is shared. It is understood. And I see now that I am not alone. Elias smiled. He knew that the progress they had made today was only the beginning. There would be more challenges, more moments of doubt, but the foundation had been laid. Through patience, empathy, and simple human methods, a bridge had been built between two very different worlds. As night settled over Virelia, the city shimmered with a quiet energy. The Virelians had begun to embrace the lessons of understanding and cooperation. Even in a world scarred by loss, there was hope, connection, and the promise of renewal. Liara turned to Elias, her eyes reflecting gratitude and resolve. Tomorrow, we will continue. I want to share what I have learned with everyone, so that they, too, may understand that life can continue, and that it is full of possibilities, even after great sorrow. Elias nodded, feeling a quiet satisfaction. This mission was not about domination or influence. It was about something far more human. The ability to inspire, to teach, and to heal through understanding. In doing so, humans could bring change not through force, but through the very essence of who they were. And as the twin moons rose fully, casting a silver glow over the city, Elias and Liara knew that they had taken the first steps toward something remarkable. Their journey was far from over, but the seeds of empathy, trust, and collaboration had been planted. In time, these seeds would grow, spreading the human gift of connection across the stars and showing the galaxy that true strength lies in understanding and compassion. The morning light on Virelia carried a gentle warmth, the twin suns casting long golden beams across the city. Elias awoke in the modest dwelling where Liara had invited him to stay, and the quiet hum of life outside reminded him how much had changed in just 2 days. The city was no longer merely surviving. It was beginning to thrive. Virelians moved with a purpose born from hope, and he could see the subtle ways they were applying the lessons of understanding and empathy he had introduced. Liara was already awake, standing at the doorway and watching the early activity below. Her expression held a mix of determination and excitement, the kind of quiet confidence that came from knowing she could make a difference. She turned when she saw Elias, her eyes reflecting the soft morning light. Today is important, she said. I want the people to not just follow what you taught, but to feel it, to carry it forward in their own ways. Elias nodded. That is how real change happens. It is not enough to teach, it must be experienced, understood, and embraced personally. Today, they will begin to see that for themselves. They started by walking through the central square, where a crowd had already gathered. Virelians of all ages were present. From children with bright, curious eyes, to elders who still carried the weight of loss in their posture. Liara addressed the crowd first, her voice calm but carrying authority. "People of Virelia," she began, "we have been shown a way to connect not just with one another, but with ourselves. Captain Grant has taught us how understanding, patience, and care can guide us through difficult times. Today, we will learn together." Elias stepped forward. "It is not enough to listen," he said gently. "We must also act. Humans often learn best by doing. So today, we will try exercises in collaboration, sharing, and understanding. These are simple, but their impact can be profound." He began with an activity focused on empathy. Each participant was asked to choose a partner and share a story, something meaningful, a memory, a challenge, or a moment of joy. The only rule was that the listener could not speak or judge, only observe and understand. At first, the Varelians seemed hesitant. Silence was unfamiliar, and many were unsure how to respond. Liara guided them patiently. "This is not about speaking correctly or impressing others," she explained. "It is about understanding, truly feeling the experience of another. Listen as if you are inside their story." Elias moved among the pairs, observing their interactions. Slowly, something remarkable began to happen. Faces that had been cautious softened, eyes that had been wary began to shine with connection, and small smiles appeared. Some participants laughed softly as they shared joyful memories, while others sighed in quiet reflection at tales of challenge and perseverance. Elias realized that human empathy, when expressed through simple listening and attention, had the power to awaken emotions even in those who had not felt them fully in years. After the session, Elias and Liara gathered the group together. "Notice how you feel," Elias said. "Even when stories are difficult, sharing them connects us. We are stronger when we understand each other, and we create bonds that help us face the future together." Liara added, "Our people have always relied on structure and ritual, but structure alone does not heal. Connection heals. When we support each other, we are not weak. We are stronger." The next exercise was about collaboration. Elias presented a task: rebuilding a community center damaged in the storms. He divided the participants into small groups, mixing elders, young adults, and children. Each group was given a section of the building to repair or redesign. The goal was not speed but cooperation and creativity. Liara and Elias moved among the groups, offering guidance, encouragement, and gentle suggestions. Elias demonstrated methods of teamwork, asking for input from everyone, dividing responsibilities based on strengths, and resolving differences through discussion rather than impatience. He emphasized that success was not measured by the final appearance of the building, but by the sense of unity and accomplishment shared among the participants. At first, the group struggled. Different ideas clashed. Some individuals wanted to take control, and others were hesitant to contribute. Elias did not intervene harshly. He simply reminded them to listen, consider each other's strengths, and find solutions together. Slowly, they began to adapt. Children suggested playful but practical ideas, elders offered wisdom and stability, and everyone contributed to a collective vision. By midday, the community center was taking shape. More vibrant and creative than it had been before the storms. Walls were reinforced with natural crystal fibers, open spaces allowed light to pass freely, and small gardens were integrated into the structure. The participants stepped back, amazed at what they had accomplished through cooperation. Applause and laughter filled the air. Elias could see the pride in their faces. A pride not in individual achievement, but in shared effort. Liara turned to Elias. "This is more than reconstruction," she said. "It is the rebuilding of trust, confidence, and hope. You have shown us that humans do not only build structures, they build connections." Elias smiled. "And that is the greatest strength any being can have. Technology and tools are useful, but the ability to connect, understand, and inspire others, that is what truly changes the world." After the community center was complete, The Varelians gathered for a quiet reflection session. Elias suggested a simple meditation exercise, adapted from human practice. Participants were asked to sit in silence, focus on their breath, and consider the ways they had helped or been helped by another. The exercise was subtle but powerful. Even the most reserved Virelians began to feel a sense of calm, unity, and understanding. Liara observed with awe. "I have never seen our people so open to learning from another culture," she said quietly. "Your ways. They are simple, yet they touch the heart. They show us the power of patience, empathy, and action combined." Elias nodded. "Humanity has learned that progress is not only measured in science or conquest, but in connection and understanding. Every act of kindness, every effort to listen, every shared task strengthens bonds that last far longer than material success." As evening approached, Elias and Liara walked to the city's central plaza. The twin moons had begun to rise, casting silver light across the structures and the people moving below. The city had transformed from a place of quiet despair into one alive with cooperation, learning, and shared purpose. Liara spoke softly. "The elders have begun sharing what they learned today with others. Even those who were skeptical now see that human ways can guide us without taking from our culture. Instead, they complement it, making us stronger together." Elias looked around at the scene, the laughter of children, the careful work of adults, the serene faces of elders, and felt a quiet satisfaction. He knew that the lessons they had introduced would continue to grow, not because he demanded it, but because humans had shown the power of empathy, patience, and collaboration in action. They reached a quiet overlook above the city. Liara turned to Elias, her eyes reflecting both gratitude and hope. "I have learned more than I imagined possible. Not just about humans, but about life itself, about the way we can face loss, challenges, and uncertainty, and still find connection and purpose." Elias placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "That is the human way. We do not always succeed perfectly, but we try. We listen. We care. We act. And we inspire. You and your people now carry that gift forward. You are teaching me as much as I am teaching you." Liara smiled, a lightness in her expression that had not been there before. "Perhaps this is the greatest lesson, that strength is not measured by power, but by compassion and understanding. That is a lesson worth sharing across the stars." Elias nodded. The city below was alive with activity, but it was different now. It was no longer just survival. It was growth, connection, and shared hope. Humans had arrived not as conquerors or rulers, but as teachers of something universal, the ability to care and understand. The twin moons shone fully above the city, and Liara reached out, touching the water of a small reflecting pool. The surface rippled gently, catching the light. "I see now," she whispered, "that life can continue after sorrow, that we can build something stronger than before, not by erasing loss, but by embracing it and learning from it together." Elias smiled, knowing that the seeds planted in the hearts of these Virelians would continue to grow long after he returned to Earth. His mission was far from over, but the foundations of change were secure. Through empathy, cooperation, and patience, humans had shown that they could inspire hope and unity, even across worlds that seemed impossibly different. As the night deepened, the city of Virelia glowed softly, alive with laughter, learning, and the quiet power of understanding. Elias and Liara sat together on the overlook, watching their people move with purpose and joy. It was a sight that reminded them both of the true potential of life. Not in the structures they build, or the systems they create, but in the bonds they form and the compassion they share. And in that moment, Elias understood that this was what humans had always carried with them across the stars. Not weapons, not dominance, not conquest, but the power of connection, empathy, and the simple courage to reach out and understand another being. The morning on Virelia was crisp and quiet, but it carried a sense of anticipation. The city, which had been recovering for weeks, now hummed with life and purpose. Buildings that had been broken and weary now stood repaired and bright, and the streets were filled with Varelians moving with a renewed confidence. Elias looked over the city from the small overlook where he and Liara had often shared quiet conversations. Today felt different. He could see the energy of hope in every face, the pride in every gesture, and the spark of connection in every interaction. Liara approached him, her usual calm determination tempered by a soft excitement. "Today is the day we take what we have learned and share it across the entire city," she said. "It is time for the Virelians to see that the lessons of empathy, cooperation, and understanding are not just for small groups. They can guide every action, every decision." Elias nodded. "That is how culture changes. Not by forcing rules, but by demonstrating their value, by allowing people to experience them themselves. When your people see the benefits, they will carry it forward naturally." They began by visiting the central market, where vendors and shoppers moved about with a mixture of routine and energy. Liara introduced Elias to shopkeepers who had been hesitant at first, but were now open to learning from the human perspective. Elias guided them through a simple practice: how to listen carefully to customers, not just to transactions, but to concerns, preferences, and feelings. Connection is not just for formal meetings or ceremonies, Elias explained. It is part of daily life. When you understand those around you, you can help them, guide them, and create trust. The shopkeepers practiced, sometimes awkwardly, sometimes with surprising insight. A vendor who had once been reserved began to offer assistance to a customer based on a subtle observation of need. Another offered a small gift with a kind word, a gesture inspired by human traditions of generosity. Slowly, the market itself began to feel lighter, more vibrant, more alive. Liara watched in wonder. "I did not think such small acts could create so much change. Yet, I see now that these actions ripple outward, touching others in ways we cannot always predict." Elias smiled. "That is how humans build trust and community. It is not grand gestures, but small, consistent acts of understanding and care that create the strongest bonds." They spent the morning moving through various neighborhoods, observing and guiding. Each time Elias introduced a human method, simple ways to communicate empathy, resolve conflicts, or collaborate, he saw immediate results. A dispute over water distribution was resolved through discussion rather than argument. A group repairing a damaged bridge worked together more efficiently after Elias encouraged listening to each person's idea. Even children practiced helping and supporting each other without adult supervision, inspired by what they had learned. By midday, the city felt transformed. Elias and Liara paused in a quiet garden, a place where Varelians came to remember loved ones. The air smelled faintly of blooming flora, and the sunlight danced on the reflective leaves. Liara knelt and ran her hand gently over the water of a small pond. "My people have changed," she said softly. "They are learning to heal themselves and each other. They are learning to act with compassion, even when it is difficult. You have given us more than knowledge. You have given us a way to live." Elias placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You are giving them the tools, but you are also inspiring them. Humans have wisdom, but it works best when shared. You are the one who will carry this forward, who will teach others how to understand and care." The afternoon brought a gathering in the central plaza. Virelians from across the city had come together to celebrate the progress of their society. Elias and Liara stood before the crowd, not as leaders, but as guides and friends. Liara began speaking first, her voice clear and strong. "Today, we do more than repair buildings or organize resources. Today, we recognize that life is not just about survival. It is about connection. It is about understanding, supporting, and learning from each other. Captain Grant has shown us that humans value these things deeply, and through their guidance, we have begun to practice them ourselves." Elias stepped forward. "The strength of any civilization is not in its structures or technology alone. It is in its people, in their ability to connect, care, and act together." You have taken the first steps toward a society where cooperation and understanding guide every action. That is a strength no disaster can destroy." The Virelians listened intently, and for the first time in weeks, there was a sense of celebration in the plaza. It was quiet, reflective, yet full of energy, a shared recognition of progress, hope, and potential. Children laughed as they ran between adults, elders nodded with satisfaction, and young adults smiled with pride. Liara turned to Elias. "Will you stay a little longer? To help guide them as they practice these lessons?" Elias shook his head gently. "My mission is complete here. The work now belongs to you. The people will carry these lessons forward, just as you will teach them. My presence is not needed for them to continue. Humans inspire change, but we cannot live it for others. You have the ability to do this yourselves." Liara nodded, understanding the truth in his words. She had learned not just human methods, but human philosophy, the idea that empowerment comes from giving others the tools to act for themselves. As evening approached, Elias prepared to depart. The city looked different now, from the shuttle landing area brighter, livelier, and full of purpose. Liara walked with him to the edge of the city, where the shuttle waited. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Not just for what you taught me, but for believing that my people could learn and grow. I will continue this work, and one day, I hope the galaxy will see the value of understanding and empathy that humans bring." Elias placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "It is already visible, Liara. You and your people have shown it. The greatest strength humans have is the ability to inspire hope and connection. You now carry that gift." She smiled, a calm, radiant expression that reflected both gratitude and determination. "Then I will not waste it. We will build a society that thrives not just in survival, but in understanding. That is the future I will help create." Elias nodded and stepped into the shuttle. As the engines hummed to life, he looked down at the city below. The lights reflected the movement of Virelians, but the energy that shone was different now. It was the energy of a people connected by empathy, guided by understanding, and inspired by the human presence among them. The shuttle lifted into the sky, and as Virelia's surface receded beneath him, Elias thought of the lessons learned. Humanity's strength lay not only in technology or exploration, but in the ability to connect across cultures, to inspire trust, and to bring hope in ways no force could ever achieve. Liara stood on the overlook long after the shuttle disappeared into the sky. The city below was alive with energy, laughter, and quiet reflection. She felt a deep sense of purpose, knowing that the work she had started with Elias would continue to grow. She began walking toward the central plaza once more, ready to teach, guide, and share the human lessons of empathy and connection with all who would listen. Night fell, and the twin moons rose fully above the city, casting silver light across the buildings and streets. The reflections in the water of fountains and ponds seemed to sparkle with renewed life. Elias's teachings had taken root, but the growth was now in the hands of Liara and her people. They had the knowledge, the tools, and the inspiration to continue. The city of Virelia slept peacefully that night, not as a place recovering from tragedy, but as a society strengthened by understanding, cooperation, and hope. Liara walked among the people, speaking softly, listening carefully, and encouraging each individual to embrace the lessons they had learned. She understood now that connection was not a one-time gift. It was an ongoing effort, a living, breathing practice that required patience and care. Elias's shuttle traveled through the skies, leaving the planet behind. But the impact of humanity remained. Humans had arrived not as conquerors or rulers, but as teachers of empathy, cooperation, and understanding. Their presence had changed a civilization, not through force or technology, but through the most profound human skill, the ability to connect, inspire, and guide others with kindness and patience. And as the stars stretched endlessly around him, Elias knew that this was only one of many worlds where humans could make a difference not through domination, but through the quiet, powerful acts of understanding, support, and compassion. He looked toward the future, imagining the countless civilizations across the galaxy that could benefit from humanity's unique gift. On Virelia, Liara gazed at the twin moons, her heart full. She knew the path ahead would have challenges, moments of doubt, and obstacles yet unseen, but she also knew that her people were stronger, more connected, and more capable than ever before. With the lessons of the human diplomat in her memory, she was ready to lead her society into a future full of hope, collaboration, and understanding. In that quiet, luminous night, the city of Virelia shone as a testament to the power of connection. It was a living example of what could be achieved when one species shared its greatest strength, human empathy, with another. And in that shining example lay the promise of a galaxy where understanding, care, and cooperation could transform worlds, one act of kindness at a time.